Good day, everyone, especially to our professor, Dr. Jonathan Oludin. I am Marjorie L. Rulida. Today, I'll be presenting to you my research study about the use of prediction pairs and story impression in enhancing reading comprehension of grade 6 pupils, a proposed lesson design. All right, so we have the rationale. In today's technological era, learners must be equipped with different skills, specifically in reading, together with the development of the teachers must also equip with various strategies and approaches to produce individuals that are globally competitive. Reading is important to humans' interaction. It is because through reading we can obtain information that will help man to survive in this today's era. The main purpose of reading is to gather and comprehend words decoded from printed page. Reading comprehension skills increase the pleasure and effectiveness of reading. In developing the reading skills of the pupils as early of their education, they should have approaches and strategies that will provide techniques which are required for comprehensions. Prediction pair is a strategy where the students are paired as they listen to the teacher read a passage aloud. The desired learning outcome is that it will promote love for reading, strengthen reading skills, and build interpersonal relationship. According to Russell Stopper, who developed this strategy, stated that prediction pairs encourages students to make prediction while they are reading. This allows students to read with purpose and pupils uses prior knowledge to comprehend message to the author. With the aforementioned statement, the researchers introduced the prediction pairs and story impression in relation to reading comprehension. The improvement of pupils' reading comprehension through the use of prediction pairs and story impression is manifested in their performance. And now let's proceed to literature background. Reading is one of the basic elements of communication. It plays a vital role in our daily lives. People read every day. The main purpose of reading is to comprehend the ideas in the material or printed page. Without comprehension, reading would be empty and meaningless. So according to Francis Bacon, reading make it a full man. This implies that we create a total view of ourselves and environment we live through reading. It makes us who we are. Reading is also a process that requires a great deal of active participation and also an interactive process among reader writer and the text in which the reader communicates with the writer and the real personas and phenomena. In the foundation of learning strategies, the more the student write and talk about their reading, the more they comprehend and remember what they have just read. If what is learned is not acted upon, it is quickly forgotten. Pupils must to exercise or practice to write and talk in order to actively present of what they have learned and they can easily remember through their own interpretation of the information. A prediction pairs is a strategy where pupils are obliged to share ideas and predictions on what they have read. It is important that shouldn't be wild guesses production should be based on evidence from that text. Illustrations, background knowledge, peers' comments, or a combination of these. By the use of this strategy, pupils will strengthen their reading skills, build interpersonal relationship, and love for reading. According to George Kelly on his cognitive theory of personality, emphasizes how the individual perceives, interprets, and conceptualizes events in his environment. Man is viewed as a scientist who develops a theory to predict events. According to Kelly, people who belong to the same cultural group by nature of the fact that they share ways of interpreting events. In this way, they share the same kind of expectations regarding certain kinds of behavior. As a children, develop, they tend to become more abstract in their thinking. They also tend to have a greater number of ways for interpreting the environment and to become more feasible in their events. One of the cognitive and metacognitive factors, the social influences on learning, tells that learning is influenced by social interactions, interpersonal relations, and communication with others. Learning can be enhanced when the learner has an opportunity to interact and to collaborate with others on instructional tasks. Through by this, learner must develop their interpersonal skills so they can share thoughts and ideas and can be actively participate in the learning process and to establish a good relationship towards learner. Schema theory is a third major area of research interest in reading comprehension. Schema are the knowledge that is already stored in the reader's memory. They are organized summaries of the past experiences, prior knowledge, experiences, and expectations will most certainly affect how what the reader comprehends. A reader's schemata are involved in interpreting new information to become part of the reader's knowledge store. Schema theory emphasizes the importance of employing pre-reading strategy that encourages pupils to use their own experiences to predict and evaluate the problems and action of characters in the stories they read. In the story impression strategy, teachers present five illustrations with sentences prior to the discussion where the pupils write a story using the illustration with sentences, characters, and title to predict what will happen next. In this strategy, pupils develop a schema for ideas found in the story and provide a starting point for revising and confirming ideas with the pupils read. According to the related study of using impression to improve comprehension, it states that the story impression method is pre-writing activity that develops schema for ideas found in the story and provides a starting point revising and confirming ideas as the students read. Students used a list taken from the story to write prediction story. The method appears to work because readers formulate a written story hypothesis using their knowledge of narrative structure and their schema for rules. In our study, the strategy is story impression. Pupils are provided five illustrations with the sentences and also the title and the character clues. The pupils will predict a story using the given clues. Dep Ed Order Number 43, Section 2002, Guidelines of the Elementary Basic Education Curriculum. English as a subject is concerned with developing competences in listening, speaking, reading, and writing among the learners. Pupils achieve the desired level of competence when they are motivated to learn and use the language. The specific skills constituting the situation using varied materials. Batas Pambansa Bilang 232, an act providing for establishment and maintenance of an education states that students have the right to receive primarily through competent instruction, relevant quality education in line with national goals and conducive to their full development as a person with human dignity. Code of Ethics for Professional Teachers, Article 8, Section 9, states that a teacher shall ensure that conditions contributed to the maximum development of learners are adequate and shall extend needed assistance in preventing or solving learners' problems and difficulties. All right, so here's my theoretical and conceptual framework where you can see the theories and legal basis to support my study, and it was being stated on my literature background. All right, so let's move to the statement of the problem. Generally, this study aimed to assess the efficacy of using prediction pairs and story impression in assessing reading comprehension of grade 6 pupils in Mandaw Gamay Elementary School of the academic year 2016-2017 as a basis for proposed lesson design. Specifically, the study aims to find an answer to the following question. First, What is the performance of grade 6 pupils in terms of their pre-test and post-test scores in using the prediction pairs and story impression in developing reading comprehension? 2. Is there any significant difference in the performance grade 6 pupils in terms of their post-test scores in using prediction pairs and story impression in developing reading comprehension? 3. Based on the gathered data, what lesson can be proposed? Next, we have significance of the study. The study was of paramount importance because it would contribute new strategies on English assessing and learning, specifically the area of enhancing pupils' reading comprehension skills. To pupils, this study would help them to strengthen their reading comprehension, prediction skills, enhancing communication skills, and promote genuine love for learning. Reading. Teachers. This would provide new techniques and strategies on how to assess students' reading skills and ability to comprehend. Guide them to an effective way of involving pupils into a meaningful learning process. To the principal, the result of this study would serve as a guide for implementing other strategies and methods that would improve and enhance reading comprehension. To parents and community. This would encourage the community, especially the parents, to support the teachers and learners to achieve a meaningful teaching learning process. To the future researchers, this would serve as a basis for the research for those who will be interested to engage in the same or related study. It would drive them on the effectiveness on the different strategies that is very useful in reading comprehension improvement. All right, so let's move to definition of terms. To make this study more comprehensive, the following terms are defined. Comprehension. This was the focus for the researcher. This will be attained through the use of the strategies, prediction pairs, and story impression. Oral reading. An act of reading a particular story by uttering the words. Okay, we have production pairs. This refers to the strategy being used. In this strategy, pupils were paired as they listened to the teacher read a passage aloud. Pupils shared their production with partner. Rubric. This is an assessment tool used by the researcher as a guide and tool in rating the performance of the pupils on both strategies, the production pairs, and story impressions. Story construction. This was the way the story will be presented in the story impression strategy. Pupils were grouped and given 5 illustrations with sentences as their guide. Story production. This was done by the pupils. They the construct new story and try to predict the next scenario. And now let's proceed to research design. To determine the effectiveness of using prediction pairs and story impression as strategies in developing reading comprehension of grade 6 pupils during the school year 2016-2017, the researcher employed the action research design. It was determined based on the performance shown in the pretest and post-test scores of the respondents. The pretest was given before conducting the lesson through the use of production pairs and story impression strategies in developing reading comprehension, while post-test was done at the end of the time frame. The data had undergone the process of analyzing, tabulating, and interpreting. Now let's go to research environment and participants. The locale of the study is Mandaog Gamay Elementary School, which is situated at Mandaog, Calapi along the highway from the right side going to Tagbilaran. The said school was established in 1930s with the help of the Parent Teacher Association. The school has 14 buildings including the home economics. There are 13 teachers and one principal. The researcher preferred the said school because, as the researcher interviewed to the teachers of grade 5, most of the pupils were low in their performance in terms of reading skills, especially in the results on their English final grades, which we were low and the number of the students are enough to be included in pairing method and became respondents of the study. According to the grade 6 teachers, The product of MLE pupils were focused in using their first language or native language. As a result, pupils find difficulties in learning how to read and comprehend the English language. The researchers gathered the respondents' English grade during their grade 5 as a basis in selecting the respondents. Grade 6, which is composed of two sections, namely prudence and simplicity, were the chosen grades as a respondents of the study. The said strategies are also new to the said school and can greatly help in the improvement and enhancement of reading skills as well as their communication skills. All right, so here is the table of my research participants. Okay, so let's proceed to the procedure. During the preparatory stage, the researchers sent a transmittal letter to the principal of Mandagamay Elementary School to request permission to conduct the research study. Upon the approval of the principal, the researcher asked the teacher about the topic to be used for the conduct of study. The researchers met the grade 6 prudence and simplicity pupils conduct a pretest before conducting the teaching study. The lessons that were used was based on the topic recommended by the teacher. There were 12 meetings including the conduct of pretest and post-test, and 1 hour was allotted in every meeting. In conducting the study, the group which was exposed to production pairs, the pupils were paired to have their partners. The teacher provides the copy of the story, which has missing events for them to predict, while the teacher read the passage aloud in every meeting. In every after missing event, the pupils will root their predictions in the answer sheets. After answering, the teacher read the original story to check the predictions of the pupils, and each pair shared their prediction to the class. In the next meeting, the teacher had a recap and a quiz was given based on the original story. In conducting the study, the group which was exposed to production pairs, the pupils were paired to have their partners. The teacher provides the copy of the story, which has missing events for them to predict, while the teacher read the passage aloud in every meeting. In every after missing event, the pupils will root their predictions in the answer sheets. After answering, the teacher read the original story to check the predictions of the pupils, and each pair shared their prediction to the class. In the next meeting, the teacher had a recap and a quiz was given based on the original story. After all the topics were presented, post-tests were administered for both groups. Data were gathered from pre-test and post-test questionnaires to determine the effectiveness of both strategies. The results serve as the lesson design in improving reading comprehension of the pupils. All right, so here's my schematic diagram. Showed the story being conducted during our study. And now let's proceed to statistical treatment. The obtained scores of the two groups in the pre-test and post-test were shown in tables. The range in each group was computed using this formula. Range is equal to the highest score minus lowest score. Means and standard deviation of the group were computed in order to get the average score of the involved pupils within the group and to determine the spread of variability of each group respectively. The formula in computing for the mean is equal to the summation of all scores obtained over the number of the respondents. The formula for the standard deviation. Standard deviation is equal to the square root of the sum of the squares of the deviations around the mean over the degree of freedom. The degree of freedom was used for critical value of the t distribution table at 0.05 levels. The formula to use is the degree of freedom is equal to the number of respondents minus 1. To determine if there is a difference between the pretest and the post-test scores of group, t-test dependent respondents was used. The formula is here's so where t is equal t value, d is equal to difference of pretest and post-test, and number of respondents. All right, so here's the t-test independent formula was used to determine the difference between the post-test and the post-test scores of the group. And now let's move to the summary, findings, conclusion, and recommendation. This chapter deals with the summary of the study, findings, conclusion made, and the recommendation that the researchers had arrived. So, in the summary, this study aimed to evaluate the effectiveness of prediction pairs and store impression strategies in developing the comprehensions of the grade 6 pupils section Prudence and Simplicity in Mandagamay Elementary School of the school year 2016 to 2017. Specifically, this certain study aimed to answer of the following questions. What is the performance of grade 6 pupils in terms of pre-test and post-test scores using the prediction pairs and store impression in developing reading comprehension? Is there a significant difference in the performance of grade 6 pupils in terms of their post-test scores using prediction pairs and story impression? What lesson that can be proposed? In addition, this study aimed to test the null hypothesis that there is no significant difference between production pairs and store impressions in developing the reading comprehension of grade 6 pupils in Mandagamay Elementary School. The researcher used the action design to determine the effectiveness of the two strategies, which are production pairs and store impression ability of grade 6 pupils during pre-test and post-test, which determine the effectiveness of the two strategies. The data being gathered from the respondents through the pre-test and post-test conducted to the grade 6 pupils, which composed of two sections, Prudence and Simplicity, were tabulated for analysis, interpretation, and statistical computation. Findings. Based on the data gathered, results showed the both groups being exposed to prediction pairs and store impressions had an increase in their performance. In prediction pairs, the mean of the pretest score was 13.45 and the mean of the post-test was 28.85 with an increase of 13.4. While for the store impression, the mean of the pretest was 13.15 and the post-test was 23.85 with an increase of 10.7. Moreover, the mean of the score of the post-test for the group exposed to production pairs was 26.85 with a standard deviation of 7.77 and the mean gain of 13.4. While the group exposed to star impression, the mean score during the post-test was 23.85 with the SD of 7.65 and the mean gain of 10.7. The researcher used the t-test to find out if there is any significant difference between the post-test result in the use of prediction pairs and star impression. The tabular t-value was 1.96 and the computed t-value was 1.23 with 38 as a degree of freedom at 0.05 level of significance. As evidenced in the computed result, the tabular t-value, which implied that there was no significant difference between the use of prediction pairs and store impression, there was sufficient of evidence to accept the null hypothesis. Now let's have the conclusion. Based on the findings of the study, there was no significant difference between production pairs and store impression. The researchers concluded a group conducted using production pairs and store impression in teaching reading comprehension had performed the same based on their post-test results. Both strategies were useful tools and effective in teaching reading comprehension since both groups had an increase in the number of pupils passed during the post-test and get the passing score percentage. Therefore, the null hypothesis was accepted because there is no significant difference between the integration of production pairs and store impression in teaching reading comprehension. Okay, let's move to recommendations. Based on the mentioned conclusion and findings of the study, the researchers came up with the following recommendations. First, the use of prediction pairs and stir impression can be introduced as techniques in teaching reading comprehension to help pupils express their thoughts and ideas. Second, teacher may adopt the prediction pairs and stir impression as motivation for pupils in the learning process. It may help pupils' encouragement to construct their own stories and predict what will happen next in the story. Third, to the future researchers, they can conduct researchers that are related to prediction pairs and stir impressions that would develop comprehension and which are suitable to learners. All right, so here are my references during my research study. That would be all. Thank you so much for listening. God bless us all.